How are we? Good. I'll make some introductions, but welcome. My name's Damian Morgan. I've worked in management and music education for about 25, 30 years. Currently head of industry and employability at DBS, which is a music production school in Manchester, and at LIPA in Liverpool, and artist manager as well. And introductions to my left, please, if you don't mind.
I'll do it myself,
yes,
shall
please.
My name's Deb Grant. I'm mainly a radio presenter. I work now for Six Music, BBC Six Music, on the New Music Show, which goes out Monday to Thursday evening, playing all kinds of weird and wonderful new music and introducing it to the station.
Hi, I'm Katherine Cantwell. I do social media and marketing management for the label Heavenly Recordings. In the last 2 years, I've also taken on my first apprentice, and I've also started to curate and do quite a few more of these panel type things.
Hi, I'm David Cameron Pryde. It's a long name, so DCP, a lot of people call me. Quite similar background to Damian, really. I'm a music manager. So I manage artists, and I also do music business lecturing at BIM University in Manchester.
And dialing in from the Seychelles, we have Jay Taylor, actually from Stockport. From Stockport is Jay Taylor. Jay, do you want to introduce yourself?
Hi everybody, I am Jay Taylor. I'm the English National Coordinator for Music Venue Trust. Music Venue Trust is a charity that's 10 years old, whose intention is to protect, secure and improve UK grassroots music venues. I co-chair the Greater Manchester Music Commission, which Damian sits on, and I sit on a couple of other kind of music steering groups in Manchester, the Nighttime Panel and the Manchester Music City Steering Group. And I have a monthly radio show on the wonderful Slack City Radio in Pryde.
Thank you, Jay. Can everyone hear Jay, by the way?
Yeah. Do you know what it's like this? It's like Charlie's Angels. Charlie used to that.
Are we the Angels? Can I be Farrah Fawcett?
Yeah.
That's a dated reference. There we go. That's aged everybody. Anyway, so first question. I'm going to go to you, Dave. Actually, I'm going to start at that end. So, what do you think are some of the biggest challenges facing those local music scenes, like in Barrow or any towns outside of the bigger cities, and how can we address them to foster growth?
I think part of the problem is disconnection between people. I bet you've got a lot of people in this town, this city, that are really into music, just talking to one before here. And I think it's trying to get them engaged with things that are going on. And it's like, I was thinking about even, on the way up I was thinking, how did my band start before I got into management? And we started by doing things like having Battle of the Bands tournaments. It sounds quite cheesy, but they're great for getting everyone doing something. A little bit of competition is a good thing. And the good thing is it gets you all to know about other musicians on the scene that you'd never really heard of. Okay? So the problem is really getting that engagement and people feeling a sense of a music community and a music scene. What was the second part of the question, sorry?
Well, what can we do to foster the growth of that as well? So kicking it off.
I think what they're trying to do here is good, isn't it? But again, it's like the promotion of it is quite key, isn't it? How do you get to people? I think it's difficult because we're a bit spoiled in Manchester, aren't we, for these type of things. What I've noticed is venues like Buns that I saw are bringing really cool artists through. Like the artists that we're talking about in Manchester, like Dirty Laces. We've got Hungry Tonight, who are breaking through in our neck of the woods. Who else did I see? We talked about martial arts. Yeah. So a lot of cool bands are coming. I think you need to get a council behind it a little bit as well. We're lucky there in Manchester that we've got Burnham's helping out with stuff, isn't he? It's very music orientated. I mean, you guys tell me, do the council support this type of thing? Or is it not on their Richter scale, really?
There's funding issues where Lesley saying more, so I'm not really involved in funding. Westmoreland Council, it's quite a bit of money going into that one. I'm representing Seattle Records, and we've just got funding for a project which supports kind of musicians who haven't released anything yet.
Right.
So giving them the opportunity to record, and we support them, a bit of a mentorship scheme getting on the ladder, I suppose.
Yeah.
But John here is a film producer, Lesley. There are funding bids from Westmoreland Council.
See, I think people like you guys are quite key, because I think even in Manchester, even though it was quite spoiled, there's certain individuals have a real get up and go thing of just doing it yourself. And then, because if you sit around waiting for these people to do it for you, you know what I'm saying?
You've got to have a DIY for us. Really.
Yeah.
You can't just like sit there and expect people to come to you. You've got to go.
Especially because you're so far from the epicentre of the music industry.
Yeah.
So you've got to have people who are willing to put shows on themselves, make a scene. But I think it's that thing of trying to get people together as well. That's always, because everyone feels like a bit of an island at first, and it's trying to get people to come together and do things, create.
Yeah, no, definitely agree.
We have an experimental music venue in Barrow Park called Full of Noises, but we rent the building from the local authority.
Right.
So the local authority wanted to knock it down, but we got some good fund applications for the arts council and school.
Oh right, that's good.
So we have funding from the arts council, we have had some support from the council.
Right. Because you need a council that understands the arts a little bit and the value of it, because it brings, it brings finance in the end. Music industry is a multi-billion-dollar industry, and I know they get sort of like, if they put too much money into music, people go, but there's lots of stuff we need money for. People can't even heat the houses, but it does generate a lot of income for our country. It's one of our biggest selling exports.
I was at a meeting on Monday actually. It was like a cultural framework consultation run by the council. So they're actually, because this is a new council, it's just changed. It's called Westmoreland Furnace now. It was Barrow Borough or something. So it's like kind of the areas have combined with different areas. So so it looks like they're being proactive in kind of reaching out to the artists and saying, what do you want from us? What do you want the framework to look like? There was a lot of scepticism in the room though on that day. It's great, like meeting other. I'm a musician and a videographer, so and there was other like arts groups in the room, but there was a lot of people just thinking, we've seen this before.
They've heard it all before.
And people were just thinking they're just going to do what they're going to do anyway, but they're just going to tick the box and say, we consulted with local artists when, so I don't know what will come of it, but they do need to do something, because music, the shipyard, you guys know about the shipyard, it's like BE Systems now need to attract 67,000 people for the coming decade of submarine contracts. So
when you say attract them, what do you mean?
Sorry?
What do you mean by attract them?
Because the town, a lot of people live out of town, or they need to get new people to live here. Live here and also stay here.
Right.
And this is the thing that was coming up, like the arts is a thing that makes somewhere a nice place to live.
It gives something somewhere, a young, vibrant thing. That's what you see with like Manchester, and you go to Sheffield, because the uni in Sheffield's right in the middle of Sheffield. It has a very vibrant vibe to it, because you've got these young people living. Do you know what I mean?
I think cities,
cafe culture.
I used to live in Leeds. I went to uni there, and the music scene was brilliant at the time, and it was based around the universities, young people going out, spending money and having a good time. Barrow, it struggles with that a little bit. Hopefully
have you got quite a few education establishments around here?
We've got
you went to the college,
Furnace College, and there's a new university in Cambridge getting built. And like John said, the economic situation in the town, a lot of money's coming in because of the BE system.
Right.
And I think sort of like the arts sector is recognising that and trying to invest in more.
That sounds a bit of a lifeblood, that company, for the place.
They do.
They've actually been the last 2 years, they've been the biggest sponsor of Barrow.
Yeah.
Oh, amazing, okay.
Which has been brilliant. Because we want Barrow to be a place to live and work. So,
Yeah.
And that's the key word, live. It's not just the word.
Yeah.
It's that everything else. You've got to have a social life and arts and all this other stuff, haven't you?
It's a bit of a bugbear about some people, like they come here on Monday, work, live in a hotel for the week, and then on Thursday night go back to wherever they're from.
Right, yeah.
And so they're making, people are making a fortune in there, but then they're taking the money and spending it somewhere else. So.
Sorry to hog this, just want to make one more point. Because we live near St Helens, and they have a similar issue, right? Because they see that Warrington next to them is quite bustling, there's 20 places to go out, and it's got a cafe culture, hasn't it? And what they're doing is, the council are really behind it though, they're knocking down the old sort of 70s shopping centre, and they're looking at stuff like in Altrincham, Manchester, where we've got like these big, and Stockport do it quite well now, don't they? Centre Stockport's had a massive regeneration of like these eateries and bars, and where they've got live music on, and it's just creating a hub where people can go and eat and have a nice environment, you know, for a night out.
Yeah, I don't know if you've walked around the town centre, but
we're a bit blustery before we got
let's say
blown
it's
round
under transformation though.
Is it?
We are getting a new market.
Oh, cool.
We're putting a lot of money into it, so we're just all praying that they're going to spend the money well and it's going to be good and it will create that kind of atmosphere.
But music should be a part of that.
Yeah, definitely.
Because that'll get young people playing.
You actually went to visit Warrington Market and you based the whole design of this one on.
That's right, yeah, I heard that, yeah.
Oh, that's good to hear then, that's really good. Right, that's right, sure.
Yeah, sorry, Katherine,
yeah.
Because that was something that came out last year. When we were speaking last year, it was the same conversation, didn't we? That people aren't spending money here. There's people, there's multi-millionaires who are working down the road and they're not spending the money here. So Katherine, just to rein it back a little bit to the original point, but obviously Heavenly have signed artists from towns that are not London, are not Manchester. What do you feel is important to regenerate a scene or get it going?
I definitely feel, that venues are important. Venues where people can go and they can play shows. Perhaps you were saying about sort of battle of the band type shows. I think having nights where it's not necessarily the same genre of music is a really good idea. I think having almost kind of open mic style nights, but perhaps curated by some of the people here. So I think I remember last year with the Sea House records, I was like, if you're releasing X amount of songs, by say lots of different artists, but one might be an indie band, one might be a singer-songwriter, it doesn't mean that they can't be on the same billings. We're seeing, certainly from a label point of view, that collaborations are becoming key on streaming platforms, whether it's massive artists like Charlie XCX doing a whole remix album, or it's smaller artists like someone like H.J. Pearson, who has throughout her career done collaborations with people and now is getting asked to do them by the bigger artists. I think it just shows, people aren't looking just for artists to be a one-man band anymore. People are looking for artists that have nurtured a community and come from a community space, whether that's somebody like Arlo Parks, who was sort of head of Independent Venue Week, or it's somebody like the Fontaines boys that obviously, they put Dublin on the map again. I think place has become significant in music, but to have that, you need to have your musicians talking to the people around them and getting to know the people within that area. And like you say, if people are buggering off at the weekends, then that's not all that helpful to make that space. But
you've got to give them a reason not to bugger off.
I think you were saying about the Warrington market being an inspiration. I wonder if that's similar to Southport's market as well, because I was in Southport last year where they just had their market built. But it's making sure that within those spaces there's a small stage where people can come and do their piano music, or people can come and sing a song. I think
that was wonderful before, wasn't it?
Yeah, that was really lovely.
It gives something straight away.
I know that there's the Baltic market in Liverpool is really good for that, and I know recently they had the Box Park take over in the Baltic Triangle in the same time. But I tell you what, the Baltic market's been there for nearly 7 to 10 years now, and it still has more numbers than this Box Park does next door, because it was all local people. It started off solely as a food place, not a music place, but with a similar thing where the shops in the city centre were too expensive for people to rent, so they thought, okay, we're chefs, we're bakers, we're this, we're that, we're going to take over this market space and make it a foodie area. Now they have extended that to music as well. And I just think the fact that, I mean, the Liverpool people are very proud people, obviously. So they will return to that space and they won't accept something that's come from outside of where they're from. So I think it's about getting enough people to fight that space.
Yeah, the community pride is so important, isn't it?
Yeah,
That's
definitely.
where the sort of network comes from.
Yeah.
I want to bring Jay into this because obviously Jay will have, I'm sure, a lot to say on this, and also Jay, well, you can speak for yourself as someone who is travelling around the country and around the smaller towns and meeting people in the venues in those towns. What's your view on, kind of generating a local scene and the importance of the venues in them?
Yeah, I mean, two things really. My primary role at MVT is working in the emergency response service. So when venues have challenges, big and small, they come into the emergency response service and we look at bespoke actions to try and kind of shore them up and stabilise those venues. But we also do a huge annual report every year that kind of pulls data from the grassroots sector. It's dancing around about 850 venues across the 4 nations. And we've just had the data for this year in, which will go into our annual report. And so, things aren't good. Either anecdotally from those conversations I'm having where venues are coming into the emergency response service, or from the data we're picking up from the annual report. Those things tend to marry. I mean, I can fire some kind of headline stats at you. So, in 2024, shows went down. There were fewer shows going out. Tickets went down. There was a 39.7% decline in ticket sales between 2022 and 2024. The volume of money that venues have to take over the bar to prop up their cultural programming went up. So essentially, the investment from selling F&B and largely from drinks being pushed into, as a subsidy into live music, it's about 162 million quid. So venues are largely, large sections of them are technically losing money on the entertainment side of things. Truth is, in 2024, the number of venues making a loss is about just under 44%. So things are quite bad.
Jay, what's the reason though? Is it the cost of living crisis? What's the reason?
Those venues are doing nothing wrong. Their models are really, really good. They're smart operators. They're making shrewd decisions. Various things have happened. They're still reeling from post-COVID challenges. They're reeling from the impacts of Brexit. They're reeling from cost of living crisis for sure. Various things have conspired to make venues that were kind of dancing on the cusp of sustainability anyway. I mean, the average profit margin last year and this year is 0.5%. So when you've got that narrow a margin, if your landlord says, I'm putting your rent up, and I think last year the average rent increase was 38%, that's quite significant. If you then have your energy company saying, well, actually, we're going to double, triple, quadruple your energy, you don't have that leeway or those reserves.
Would you say they're two of the main reasons though, Jay? Because it sounds like rent and energy are the things that are really stinging people. Because I know people like Wax and Bean in Barrow, a fantastic record coffee shop, and he just said his rent had gone up by something like £900 a month, and that's, I don't think the hunger for music's diminishing from people. It's all the other things are making it harder and harder.
Yeah, I agree. I think you've got a perfect storm of operational costs going through the roof, and the people who used to go out to gigs struggling to be able to afford it. There are things that can be done. As a charity, we take this data, but obviously it becomes a lobbying and advocacy tool. But the CMS Select Committee report that was commissioned this year that highlighted some actions that categorically can make a difference to the grassroots live sector, not just venues but also artists and grassroots promoters. Obviously we've had a change of government, so that thing's cycled back to Lisa Nandy essentially. It was encouraging to see, David, you and I saw Lisa speak yesterday. Yeah. It was encouraging for her to mention that report and say that they were going to she's essentially going to speak about it sometime in the next month. But there are things that can be done. I mean, we quite like to see, you've probably seen in the, in the press, we'd quite like to see a £1 ticket contribution from arena and stadium shows.
Yeah.
That end of the market had the best year ever this year, and it's previous that best year ever in 2023. A fund that went into kind of supporting those venues, so they can do that research and development, they can still create those artists together of the future, but also recognising that these are amazing community spaces. These are extraordinary spaces, and those, in Manchester City Centre, we're blessed with many of those spaces. But you move out to the other boroughs, or you move out into those B, C, D markets, there's sometimes one doing all the cultural heavy lifting in that neighbourhood.
Yeah.
And so we need to protect those spaces, because not only are they kind of crucial cultural spaces where people can see affordable, original live music, they've also taken the space of short start centres and social clubs and all those other things that have vanished. They're hugely important. There are things we can do, but it's absolutely going to, the key of it is going to be having drip down funding for those people who are making a fortune.
Yeah. I mean, one thing also it's having an effect on is then it affects where bands will tour. Because, for example, if you're going to do a tour in the south of England, there's a northern band in a tour in the south of England, you might have done Southampton, Oxford, Cambridge. Now you probably just do one of those towns because and hope that the fans go. So there's, again, venues are missing out on the headline bands that are going to bring people in, aren't they? Just bring Debbie in. So, because obviously you're across, your specialism in radio, but you're across seeing what's happening with emerging artists as well. What are you seeing happening, and what's your view on the impact on what's coming into radio as well? Have you seen it?
It's interesting. I now feel underqualified compared to the other people on this panel to talk about this, just because I don't have that much experience of living in a small town like this and being part of an emerging scene. I mean, I was in London for like 20 years and Dublin before that. But I can say, obviously, I do the new music show on 6, and we, on our show, and I think across the network in general, we're always excited to see an artist that comes out of a town who we haven't represented on the show before. I'm thinking there's an artist we're currently really excited about called Short Straw, who comes from Coventry, who sort of talks about how there isn't really a scene there. She sort of created her own little thing. And I think that's that feels like a contribution we can make if we're making sure that we look out for artists who come from a place who's maybe underrepresented. And, she's kind of taken on this mantle of trying to create something in, where she's from.
Yeah.
And so it's nice to be able to give that a platform. I mean, something else that we do, we have a feature called, I think it's supposed to be called Spotlight. We call it Scene Spotlight, but its official title is Spotlight. And the sole focus of that is to go around the country and find a festival or, a scene, something that's happening in a smaller place that's maybe underrepresented, and give that a platform too. I think the BBC in general is obviously making an effort to become less London-centric. So it feels like as the new music show, we have a responsibility to be a part of that on as grassroots a level as possible.
And is there a radio station that represents this area or plays new music?
Yeah, it's Cantwell. I'm a radio presenter there.
Okay.
cool.
I was a musician as well. I'm only 17, but I've been doing that since the start of this year now.
What's it called, sorry?
Can Do FM.
All right, okay.
They're very big on pushing the community, and it's a community radio station with all volunteers. We don't get anything out of it. It's primarily really Barrow events now, what's going on in Barrow town.
Who funds it for you?
Sorry?
Who funds it?
Who does fund it? I don't even know.
It's advertising, isn't it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, we get bits and pieces from different places, but I know it's Jonny Williams that sort of runs it, and Andrea, and they are always trying to find funding where they can to put on the events, because it is what, it's like Dino Day, they always do all the presenting, like the soapbox, like the derby, and all that, these sorts of things that are bringing people into the community. And they are really good when they do come out, and it's just, finding the funding to actually make them happen. But once they do happen, it is really good for Barrow, really good.
Yeah.
And do you find, like, is your focus playing artists that come out of Barrow? And is there, like, scenes that you're kind of coming across as far as that goes?
I mean, there is a big focus that always about, like, if you have any sort of tracks that you want, if you want to become an artist, you can.
Yeah.
Like in my radio show, every single time I plug, if you have music that you want to get out there, send it in because we can play it and we can push you as an artist and get you seen. But it is just people, I think, especially the young, or like for me, it's been out of my comfort zone. My first gig when I was 13 years old, and then since then, I've been pushing myself out of my comfort zone to get myself out there. And it's how I've got to how I am today. But I feel like there's so many young people, especially around here, that feel a bit like you have to stay within themselves. But if they just, put that track out, and you never know what will happen.
Do you play one local artist an hour?
Yeah, it's one local artist an hour.
Yeah.
We've got Monday to Friday, and we've got 2 hours especially that is dedicated to playing quite a bit of local music, and all the radio presenters as well are all very much community based, trying to get local people seen instead of what you hear on every single radio.
There was a band from here, I think the singer was in the band Hers. The band Hers?
Yeah, it was.
Because it's like my eldest kid, 19, it's his favourite band was Hers, and they had that tragic, I think they both died tragically, but I think the singer Stephen Fitzpatrick was from here, and I thought they were incredible.
Well, there's a bit of
It's just so sad because they could have been a bit of a signpost for him as well.
Yeah.
Actually, I don't know, because this is being filmed. Is this going out straight away?
I'm probably going to use I don't know if I'm going to put it on.
But there is, so a band I'm managing have just signed to High Store Hers.
Yeah.
Label, and they're doing a special commemorative thing.
They were fantastic.
We should speak to them about doing something in Barrow.
That'd be good, wouldn't it? Yeah.
Just to bring it back to radio, do we know what area which Introducing covers?
It's combined now, Lancashire and Cumbria. It was just Cumbria, but
is it part of the call?
I guess it is, I think so,
Syndicate stuff.
Right.
Yeah.
I'm just wondering, the question for Deb, but for everyone as well, really, how maybe a local station can feed stuff into Introducing in any way, or is there a way that stuff
Introducing have played quite a few things from around here actually. They've been pretty good. Yeah, I've had some stuff. Yeah. Yeah.
Because there's a bit of a disconnect, from what I can gather speaking to Introducing presenters, there's a little bit of a disconnect between Six and Introducing a little bit.
Yeah, there's a huge, there shouldn't be really. I mean, Emily Pilbeam now, who is on Introducing in Leeds, she has an Introducing mixtape on Six Music now, which is solely for the purpose of taking stuff from those shows and bringing it into Six. But it's weird. I feel like the whole structure of Introducing is really good. It makes it really easy for artists to send their music into the BBC, and I feel like it's been responsible for breaking quite a lot of new artists over the years. So the BBC is so siloed anyway. That's a whole other thing. But it's weird. Yeah, when I talk about us trying to break artists from different cities on our show, it's literally because people email me directly with their music. And it's funny, sometimes people will email me and be like, oh, I have this new song, I've uploaded it to the Introducing whatever it is platform thing, and I'm like, I have no access to that at all. So there should be more of a connection there.
I think they think that once that services the whole BBC.
Yeah, for sure, and you can understand why they would think that. It's a really good point. That would give us a kind of more linear access point to people trying to send us stuff.
That service is also like half the battle. Like when I was trying to upload my music, we'd always be like, they're listening to your track, and then it's like, oh, is it going to get on there? Is it not? Sort of like anticipate it's actually going to be played. And my music is getting
That's cool.
I was so young, but it's not so much available now. But it's just like letting people know how to get it on there. People just search up and it'll just be like this. And upload it, and then
it's on our show, and I imagine it's true for Introducing as well. You get sent so much music. I think producers and presenters as well. It shouldn't be this way, but there's almost a reluctance to be like, here's more ways to send us your music, which is a terrible thing to say, but I just feel like that probably is why there hasn't been a sort of connection point built between the Introducing uploader and other shows on the BBC. because everyone's in capacity in terms of the amount of...
I recently discovered, because
Yeah.
someone, the local DJ at Can-Do FM shared it with me, that is that any music that was over 3.5 minutes long wouldn't get played by Can-Do FM. And then I looked back at the last few songs that I'd released, and then everything that was over 3.5 didn't. And then the same actually applied to introducing. So I don't know if they've got something similar there. But
not on our show. I mean,
Right.
you'll get like a 10, 12-minute like jazz
Right,
freak
yeah.
out. That's probably what's
Yeah.
taking up all the time, actually.
Commercial space on a commercial station, and also just time. Time is finite. I think I had a conversation yesterday. It's part of the aim the other day. There's a round table discussion at a conference that we were at, talking about the importance of radio, because I've seen it, I'm sure you've seen it, we've seen it as the fluctuation in ticket sales. It does have a direct link to what happens in the live arena, because people hear dates. So I know with a band that I was managing, they didn't get any airplay, the dates weren't announced, the tickets didn't sell.
Yeah.
It was the direct correlation. So, some audiences they're not interested in your Instagram, they're interested in what's happening on radio.
Yeah.
It's so important.
And also I think people are quite, if someone's really into music, they'll be quite loyal to specific radio shows. So if you have a show that's endorsing a particular artist, it will make people much more inclined, obviously, to buy gig tickets.
Question I'm going to let Jay back in a second. Hi, Jay.
Hello.
Still there? Still sunning yourself in the Seychelles?
It's beautiful.
Yeah. Get that sunscreen on. So local scenes, obviously, the picture at the moment, as you said, it painted a picture that's a little bit depressing there, and obviously the...
don't invite him again.
But and obviously, we speak to venues, don't we, a lot on part of the commission as well, where there's, that people just have to stop selling food because they're selling pizzas that are costing them to cook pizzas in a bar, so they stop doing it.
Yeah.
What do you feel like the future's looking like, though? I mean, like Lisa Nandy, new culture secretary, her speech of the day was really positive. It was nice to hear her talk about music instead of football and everything else. So, what are the glimmers of hope for the future, do you feel, Jay?
Well, I think from government's point of view, I think you will know what she thinks about the recommendations from that CMS grassroots report sometime in the next month. There's some things in there that categorically make a difference. I mean, we'd quite like to see, currently there's business rates relief for hospitality and leisure businesses. I think it might be 75%. I think it can be discretionary a little more if you constitute it as in a different way, CICs and certain things like that. I think we'd quite like that to carry on. I mean, frankly, business rate should be zero for grassroots music venues. If that's removed, we're going to see venues shut. There's no two ways about it. So certainly keeping that in place would make a difference. VAT on tickets. I mean, we've got the highest VAT on tickets in Europe. It's routinely 5%, 7% elsewhere. 20% front-loaded VAT on tickets on businesses that aren't really making a lot of money anyway. It's bonkers. Those businesses largely reinvest what they make. We don't have directors taking huge dividends every year. So kind of keeping that in place. Obviously the ticket levy. I mean, one of the other things we're asking for is a fan-led review. We'd quite like to know what the fans actually think. Nobody's thought to ask them yet. And so I think something like that would make a real difference. In terms of venues and the support we're giving them from a charity point of view, we're seeing venues remodel. So some of those models that might have been fit for purpose before the pandemic aren't really cutting the mustard now, not with a significant drop in income and operational costs going up. So we are seeing businesses that historically were limited companies move to a CIC structure and access some of those benefits that those community interest companies elsewhere have been able to access. So, it could do things like, it could give you discretionary business rates relief, it could give you additional funding, it might open you up to reduced energy costs, does a bunch of things. And so we're sort of seeing venues recognise that they need to remodel. Certainly they should be getting more funding for that cultural development work they're doing. I think if at the moment there's a 5 million ring-fenced pot of Arts Council and supporting grassroots music fund, which largely venues, historically, the sector had a less than 4% interaction with public funding. slightly better now because they've learned how to do it over the pandemic. But certainly, we'd like to see that renewed as well. So these venues should be getting some money to kind of support that amazing work they do. I mean, I know Rob Dunphy's in the room. Rob did, for my money, one of the most drop-dead brilliant grassroots.
It's not, unfortunately.
Is he not? Like, he's still building the stage.
Yes.
But for my money, Rob put in an application for a lot of money to do some project work where he moved some artists around different grassroots music venues, including pubs. And it's just like a drop-dead piece of work that he would never have been able to do without that funding. And so kind of supporting that work seems key to me. And also I think recognising that people's experiences in those parts of the country that are in secondary and tertiary touring routes is probably quite a bit different than those in the city centres. And recognising just how much cultural heavy lifting those places are doing.
What's come across to me, and I'd be interested in the panel's view on this, is obviously how the venues regenerate and build community, but how do we then join things up a little bit better? I got the impression a year ago that there was a lot going on with people who'd never spoken to each other, and there was a bit of there's a couple of heads nodding. I got that sense. So, in fact, I'm going to ask you, has that improved? And the panel connectivity, because even the bigger cities aren't great at it. How can small cities connect? What's it?
Yeah, I mean, I remember last year as well that the people sitting in this room didn't know each other or weren't aware of who each other was. I think we had two guys that worked in the cafe come venue down there. We had the guy from the record shop down the road. We had the lovely young singer-songwriter who was not too dissimilar to your age last year.
Just got hold of that song.
And we had an eclectic mix that hadn't spoken to each other. So have you noticed anything change since last year? Good or bad? It doesn't have to be good.
Changes like good and bad in different places. I feel like obviously venue-wise around here, all I can sort of see is like the meeting place is really good.
Yes.
For live music currently, like they get tons on. But I don't feel like original music is sort of being spread. Like that's really good. I did a gig last night at Taylor's as part of our music weekend.
Yes.
And it was good because it meant that I could showcase more of my original music, but I don't feel like...
And was there a few people down?
Oh yeah, there was really
Right, great, that's good.
And I feel like people do want to see it, people want to get out and listen to local music, but I feel like especially since COVID, people are sort of like, oh, do you want to go out or do you want to just stay at home? It's like, where's that determination to get out there? But with like the Sea House and like, what do you think, Jonny? Obviously, because you're in...
I was just going to ask you a question. What was the response to your original stuff compared to the covers that you played from the audience?
I mean, we spoke about this last night. Yeah, it was better last night, but I feel like I did a gig at Kendal Brewery Arts a good few months ago now, a fantastic venue, did all originals, and everyone was really listening. There was no talking, it was all about listening to the original music, letting the lyrics hit you. And actually appreciating the artist for what they do, whereas I feel like usually when you play original music in Barrow and places like here, people know the covers, so they're going to have a better attraction to the covers, which is why I feel like I have to sort of chuck in a couple here and there to get their attention, because otherwise people just like switch off. But I feel like last night was good and people were actually clapping and actually listening to the music, but I feel like there is still a gap in hearing
So
the lyrics.
how many artists were on the bill last night? Just you. Yeah. And if I remember correctly, last year, was there a cafe that was putting on music as well, or like there was more of like a daytime space where there was like putting on acoustic shows or something like that? I may be wrong in saying that.
Yeah.
Yes, the Hive, that was it. Yeah.
Sort of like it was similar time. It was sort of like early evening, like maybe 5 o'clock onwards. I did one there, but it was just sort of a different atmosphere. Just sort of pub, like what you would usually get around here. It was like meals, and there was like was a lobster, they were actually tasting it. They were like serving everyone lobsters and it was paid and it did sell out.
Yes.
It was a small venue, but it was a really nice night because it was a totally different atmosphere. The library, supporting Holly Card at the library at the end of this month or start of next month.
It'll be interesting to see on you about that then, because you've done one a while ago, didn't you, there? There was nobody there.
At the library
You
events.
brought in somebody
Yes.
got a good
It was a
photo.
band from America that were here.
Okay.
They were really good.
Yeah.
It was a duo, brothers duo. It was,
So they get loud in libraries.
yeah.
Yes, yeah, they're really good.
All the way down to like Lancaster and things like that. And that will be interesting to see because again, that's original music and it's seeing who will come along to that and support that.
Yeah, I mean, I think on evenings like that, I mean, it's very difficult now with the amount of sort of surveys that we get asked to do and things, but getting feedback from those types of events and finding out some of the reasons why people were there rather than why they weren't there would be a really good idea.
Something that has changed, well, sort of changed because it's new, is the Coast Road Festival was held in Barrow Park this summer. I don't know if you've heard of it. They did it 2 years ago for the first time. It was a little bit out of town, but they moved it into the park, which is just down the road. And that was fantastic. And there was a lot of original artists.
Who was promoting that?
Local artists. They're called the Locking.
Yeah, they were here last year, it's Mal.
Yeah, Mal.
I was following, yeah.
Was it
Yeah.
a success?
Well, from the outside looking in, it looked like it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know what the books are.
A decent
but, like,
turnout.
it was a decent turnout. Yeah. So that was good.
Because I was just thinking about Damian's original question about what do you do to connect things up, and I think we make a point about the government, and I think we can't put everything on the government. I think, thankfully, we've got a newer government who are more arts-centric than before. The last government, not to get too political, but you know, we had a Prime Minister who wanted to put Latin back in schools rather than musical instruments into kids' hands. That's how out of touch they were, okay? Hopefully, with this new one, maybe we'll see a bit of funding for the arts. But I think the industry itself needs to take a little bit of responsibility. And I think Jay did mention like the ticket levy for the guys right at the top, creaming it. Live Nation, I mean, I work with Live Nation, okay? But I know that these big guys in the big arenas, they're making fortunes. So there's got to be some responsibility to them to help grassroots. There's got to be some responsibility even with festivals. Like, you've got Kendal just down the road from here. Why don't Kendal be lobbied to get a Barrow stage? You know, we always put it back to BBC introducing, and say, oh, why not BBC? We're always looking at these massive bodies, and it lets people off the hook to me, the people that are actually making the money. It shouldn't all just be about the government and be about the BBC. They need to keep it's within their interest to keep thriving scenes coming through.
He was on the panel.
He was,
Did anything come of that afterwards?
Yeah.
They have little stages.
Yeah, we do.
With some local.
They did have stages for local
like it's not
acts.
kind of like Barrow centric.
Yeah.
Like, it's like
Well, I'm almost
a bit more
thinking
broad name. But
following what you've just said, because that was something that we sort of we did talk
So
about
it's
just last year. They do sort of local bands. It's more sort of in the three areas, I think, sort of Lancashire, Cumbria, and here. But you were just talking about that venue that you went to that you love. That's certainly something where you could suggest to them, look, I've got X amount of friends that are musicians. Can we do something bi-monthly at your venue where, you know, you're saving on travel costs going down there because all of you are going together. You're bringing your mates, which guarantees, 10 or 20% ticket sales. And you're bringing new music to a place that you know actively supports new music. So that's another way of breaking sort of out of where you're from and going somewhere else, but then inviting people from a different place to come and see your local
it's a nice
music.
little hub for them as well. It's
Yeah.
good, like we've got the forum here.
Yeah.
And it's just, I played at the forum like in the foyer like years ago. That was like one of my first gigs that I did, and that was a nice little tea and coffee sort of afternoon. But you've also got things that actually go on like proper performances, but you don't really see very many. It's all like the musical theatre and like the weekly shows and things like that. It gets full with, but people don't have the funding to just sort of say, can you get in there? And like I wouldn't be able to just put on a show. at the farm. I don't have that support. I wouldn't be able to do that. But places like Kendal Brewery, they're all for having that central. If you haven't known alcohol so much,
Well, that was it. That was the other issue.
Like last night was good.
Yeah.
There's still a lot of people that just were shouting and not even listening. But it's like.
Was it acoustic music?
Yeah.
That's why they get a bit.
Yeah, no, I was going to say that the venue thing, I think for young people in particular, I mean, I was reading the nightclub reports this week, and you know, all the magazines were talking about how tragic it was that all of these nightclubs are closing, and it is, but there's a reason for that outside of the government and outside of, you know, people, outside of rent and outside of, you know, things, energy prices, is that some young people don't feel safe being around alcohol anymore, and that is becoming more and more prevalent. And these venues have always been, whether we like it or not, music and alcohol. But music and alcohol have always run side by side, and young people are not drinking anymore.
And they're not drinking, so they're not buying beer in venues.
Yeah, and some of them actively don't want to go into venues where there's alcohol. That's only something I've literally heard recently from
because
people.
of fear of what people are like with alcohol, or
because of I think a lot of it is harassment. And a lot of it is harassment from people that are older than them. And I think in terms of, I think that's the sort of extreme side of it. I think the less extreme side of it is that young people just aren't buying alcohol. A lot of them are happy to go out to gigs and do stuff, but
my kid won't go into town, 19, won't go in because just said it's a nightmare.
There's a lot of sort of non-alcoholic, obviously, options on sale in venues, and so many venues have really, you know, cottoned onto the idea quickly, and they have a lot of different non-alcoholic options.
This is non-alcoholic wine,
but I'm just not sure how much money that those options are make, and I think also the alcohol companies have cottoned onto it, and the cost of having the fancier options is probably a cost to the venue as well. I would love to know the answer to that question. You know, what a Lucky Saint compared to the latest new one that's come out. What's the cost of having those two non-alcoholic beers in your venue? It's probably costing the venue more than it is to not to. But I definitely think that there's something in earlier shows for younger people as well.
Yeah, or they're now, like when I was growing up, we had all ages shows, which are probably, I mean, they're more bigger, greater dens of iniquity probably than them. But yeah, I mean, there was no drinking or anything, but there was like afternoon, early evening kind of all ages shows. Which were specifically for younger people. I mean, I guess that limits the audience a bit, but it certainly felt like a sort of safer space to go and watch music.
Well, where I grew up in Bournemouth, which really does not have a music scene either, it sort of stretches as far as, you know, the folk festival once a year, and an O2 Academy, which, although seemingly one of the most incredibly beautiful and best sounding buildings, has just fallen more and more off the radar. Of getting good audiences, and now with the nightclubs closing, you know, I don't know what's next for Bournemouth, but one of the things that it was always good at doing was putting on local bands of an afternoon on a Saturday or on a Sunday, and people would go. And
Gas Next Door's playing under 18s bands, right? Because at the minute there are lots of under 18s bands forming.
Yeah,
that's great.
Which is really exciting. I think Bournemouth used to do it on the pier, where they would have an under-18 stage, and it was. I remember the band were called the Flaming Monkeys at the time, but I just remember going down with my friends, and we were at school, and we were 16, and we weren't trouble or certainly seeking trouble at that point, and it was a success. But I am failing to remember how that would have been funded, or what guise it would have been under.
Well, we're also in, I mean, this goes back to Lisa and Andy's speech, and there was a name panel the other day talking about younger people and what happens in secondary schools when it comes to music education. Obviously, there are some schools that just don't do music at all. There's also, I mean, in Manchester, which I think would be very well served, it's very poorly served for instruments. There's also a skills gap in secondary school music teachers who come from a conservatoire type background, where it's all recorders, violins and pianos. Fantastic. but they don't understand production techniques or the music business, or even simple stuff that I'm sure, as we speak, there's about 200 people in 4 mile radius making drum and bass in the bedrooms. But where is the visibility for them? Where can their music go? So what am I saying? How can we join things up? I'm interested to know from you actually where. Okay, there's venues, we've got labels, we've got radio. There's things happening. Where are the gaps? And then where, going back to the collaboration thing, can you become a collective force and have because this week is brilliant, we always talk, but I feel like it's coming up to October, we're going to do the week. And actually, maybe what's happening in between. So there's a few questions there. What's missing? How can you join it up? Then what can you do to make it a collective force? Barrow?
One of the things for me is, if you can somehow engineer your town to be on the touring map a little bit more. Do you know what I mean? Because if you think of when you're routing a tour, because we do it all the time, this with agents, don't we? If you came up this neck of the woods, okay, I think obviously places like Bums looks ace. Does it, I know it's getting artists from Manchester, because we've seen, like we mentioned before, with Hungry Dirty Laces, Martial Arts.
Wilson's DJs there quite a few times.
But they're just coming from Manchester and doing the show. Is it being put on the touring map where you can see Barrow as one of the... Do you know what I'm saying?
Times, yeah. I mean, I remember I supported Dave Hemingway from the Beautiful South, his new band called The Sunbirds. That was at Bums, and he...
Where was it? Before?
No, at Bums.
Oh, Bums.
Yeah, and it was great. But again, even though he was here with his new band, it was like, oh my gosh, he's here from the Beautiful South, it's great. And there was no one there. There was like 15 people with that, and even, I understand I was supporting, wasn't many people, but I stayed afterwards and there was no one there. It's even if we are on the map for tours and things like that,
it doesn't say.
We started to find that we're on the touring map in terms of experimental music. So, we've had a few artists recently, we've got somebody coming from LA, we do get local artists as well, we tend to get our local artist support in somebody who kind of comes in. But we've seen tour posters that's been Tashi Wada, Los Angeles, San Francisco, Barrow. And I'm like, doing a double take, so cool. And we need to see more of that. So David's question about are we talking more since we last came here last year? I think we probably are a little bit.
I think a big problem is a lot of us are running these things, we're running this, but we're having to do a job alongside it.
Yeah.
And it becomes almost impossible sometimes
Yeah.
because you've got 2 lives and to try to keep them all spinning.
It feels a bit like, Jane, I'm going to bring you in. It feels like they need a Barrow Music Commission.
Yeah.
And someone who's advocates who are lobbying and pushing and advising.
I think there aren't actually that many music commissions dotted around the UK. I think the 2 key ones are Liverpool and Manchester, aren't they?
Yeah.
And, what it does, while Liverpool has got actually quite a significant budget they can play with there, ours is quite modest. What we do have is access to those people in local government, where we can nudge them about legislation, we can nudge them about funding, we can, I have monthly meetings with the GMCA Nighttime Culture team just about venues who are facing challenges in Greater Manchester. You can kind of put them on the table and actually have that conversation. I think if you've not got that dialogue, you've not got that relationship, it's actually quite difficult. You're essentially kind of speaking to people just as part of the constituency. So I think we've got as part of the Music Venues Alliance, we're probably quite spoiled when it comes to connectivity, because the fact we've got the Music Venues Alliance, we've got 850 venues. Part of what makes that amazing is they talk to one another. So when we went into the pandemic, we already had this dialogue between the charity and the stakeholders, where people were already kind of talking. It wasn't disconnected at all. And Venues Day that we threw on Tuesday. It's not a conference. People don't sit on panels and kind of hammer things out. People go there with the express intention of meeting people who can actually solve some of their problems and help them build their venues. So, we probably have it kind of slightly better than other organisations. pretty short. I think we've got a Music Venues Alliance group in Brighton. We've got one in Austin. There's conversations happening in other parts of the world. But I think absolutely venues getting together. I mean, I was thinking about in Manchester, Jeff Thompson, who runs a convention. Jeff's got some funding from Arts Council England to just do music mixers. I think he's got enough money for 3 years. He's going to do them. He's going to do them quarterly, I think. Where it's completely free entry. You turn up, the room's packed full of people from the industry. There's no bands playing. There's DJs at a low level, and you have at it. And that's just incredibly valuable. And he's got off his back and done it. I think there's probably an Arts Council, knowing that works, there's probably an Arts Council application to do that in Barrow.
I wonder if, and this is me just thinking, probably a conversation we should have in private, but whether for one of the commission meetings we invite someone from a spokesperson from here or just to be at it and see what happens. And maybe
I had a conversation with some venue operators from Oxford on Tuesday, and they've just started to have these progressive conversations with their authority, and they were saying, well, how did you set up the commission? How did it come about? How autonomous is it? All those questions. And so, me and Jeff had a great conversation with them, going to introduce them to members of the Liverpool City Region Music Board. I categorically think that even if that thing hasn't got a budget, the fact that it creates a shorthand dialogue with people who can actually improve people's circumstances is incredibly positive. Even if the council's got no money, you can still have a say when it comes to their culture strategies, their placemaking strategies. And
our experience, I think, speaking for, there's a number of people on the commission. Our experience is things sometimes happen because we're on the commission, and sometimes happen in spite of it. We go, okay, we're annoyed about this, we're going to make it happen. If they're not going to do it, we'll do it. So it's useful in both those senses.
I think it'd be great what you said before. I think it'd be great if someone from this audience who's passionate came to Manchester and joined in with some of these things and took some ideas away here.
Yeah. Just to see the dynamic of the type of people that are on the commission, because it's from all areas, and some of the stuff that gets discussed, it's very possibly minor things to some people outside of it and some really major things, but things do happen as a result.
Yeah, it's not a secret, it's not a secret. People are happy to talk about the work. I mean, Holly and I did that presentation at Jeff's music mixer where we talked about what the commission had its hand in. We'd gladly talk about it.
Yeah. So anyway, I had loads of questions. We've done an hour. I've asked about 4 of them. Have you any questions for the panel or myself?
I did have a question, yeah. I mean, I'm Jonny, representing the Sea House Records, but I'm also an artist on the label as well. I've got a single coming out, and I've had quite a few singles releases over the last 3 or 4 years. If an artist is reaching out to say, this is made for radio possibly, or press or things like that, I mean, I've got a promo CD here. Do people still listen to promo CDs?
That's such a good question.
You do if you have an old Citroen like me and Lindsay.
Yeah, because myself, fellow musicians give me CD. I've got a CD player in my car, and I still enjoy CDs. I'm from that generation, but I can understand if I'm carrying around a CD, it's got a press release in it as well, the contact details, so it's more than just the music.
Yeah.
Are people going to listen or are they going to throw it away? I got a few songs played by Steve Lamarck on 6 Music by sending him a CD in the post. I wrote the press release myself. I did all the CD myself, just like this at home. I sent it off to him, and he used to listen to the CD and play it.
Yeah.
So my question is, what's more effective, emails or postal stuff, or is it?
I think it depends on. So when did Steve play your tracks when you sent him the CD? Because I feel like his system might have changed.
Just like in the last 3. He's played a couple of songs. So the last 3 years on the New Music Fix show.
Yeah. I think so. It's funny. We were having a conversation before everyone arrived about. Obviously, there's all this hype around this resurgence in vinyl, but actually a lot of us are talking about how we buy CDs, or like Katherine was saying, for artists on the label, she'll see a greater sale in CDs than vinyl lately, I guess just because of cost of living. So I think people do have CD players. A lot of DJs I know listen in the car. I think if you're meeting people in person, like you gave me a copy of your CD, and that's great because it's like I have a physical reminder to, like, not that I would forget, but you know what I mean? Like I have a physical thing in my bag that I can go and listen to. Personally, I don't own a CD player, but obviously you have the PR in there too. So that's really useful to have a tangible thing because I've met you and I now have a reference point. I mean, I have I can listen to it in work basically, but I think I'm the outlier. I think most of the DJs have a CD player in their car where they would probably listen to music that they're sent. Generally speaking though, I think for the most part it's done digitally. Like I have a system where anyone who emails me music, I put it into a special inbox and then I have time every day where I'll sit and listen through everything. And I think most of the DJs I know have a system like that. So that's a long-winded answer. The short-winded answer is it's always better to support it by sending an email, but I think it's really good if you're meeting people in person in particular to be able to hand them something tangible.
And also that giving something physical like you have today, there's no harm in following up that with an email as a reminder as well. But like you say, I think if you physically have seen somebody, then there's no harm in doing it.
See, I think because you put the CD in my hand today, I'm going to listen to it.
Right.
Whereas my job's very different to say Deb's, where her job is to find new music and play it. That isn't my job to find new music and play it as such. So I'll get a lot of emails from people and I'm busy and I think, I'll listen to that later. 9 times out of 10 you forget it. You completely forget that. Whereas with what you've done there, it's quite retro. But I like the fact it's retro, so it sticks in my head and I think, do you know what, he's gone to the effort of doing that, so I'm going to have a listen. And I think that's probably what Steve did. He's gone to the effort. Because I know email is the preferred way, but you get so many of them. So I just think...
Having said that though, like the Six Music DJs get sent, like we get sent a lot of CDs of physical music as well. So I imagine Steve's system is to sit down with this pile of CDs and actually sit and listen through them, but I feel like that's... I feel like I know fewer and fewer. I think it's kind of an old school way of doing things. Like a presenter would sit down with their producer and be like, okay, what's in my cubby hole? Let me go through this pile of CDs and listen to them. I think that happens less and less. I think it's always good to send an MP3 to support whatever you're sending.
Yeah, but I do both of them.
Yeah, but the best way is to meet people in person if you can.
And also, there have been a few people, I don't know whether this applies to you, Deb, but I get quite a few people sort of asking, what should I say about this? And, there is a thing where people don't read their emails properly. And so perhaps long press releases aren't getting read. But you definitely still need an introduction to yourself and a bit about where you're from and what you're doing. Because more and more, I'm certainly finding that people's stories... obviously the track needs to be good, but people's stories are also really important. But stories that involve places and people and names and venues, all of these things. If a highlight of your career has been in your local venue, talk about that venue, because all of these things will then feed into each other and help each other out.
Yeah, I mean, from my perspective. A story is important because it gives me something to say if I'm going to play the track on the radio, and I think that's true with all radio DJs. Like first and foremost, it has to be the music, and then it's useful to have some information. It's not like, although having said that, if anything that crops up now from Barrow, I'm going to be like, oh, this is really interesting.
But he's actually got a really good story about his song, so I'm really hoping the song's good. Because if I got an email,
it's all subjective though.
Better not be rubbish after all. It's like if I got an email saying a song, a message to my 8-year-old self, which is what you found some old words you wrote as an 8-year-old and put songs to it. I'd read that because it sticks out. Yeah. It's like that's the start of a good press release to me.
The first band that I had that signed to Heavenly, Katherine works with, I picked up, they gave me their CD and it was that made me manage them. Yeah. Because the CD sat in I never took CDs in the car. It sat there, and my kids would ask to listen to it.
Right.
So I thought it must be all right. If, at the time, a 12-year-old thinks it's okay, or whatever, 11-year-old thinks it's all right. Is it okay? Going for it, but it is quite old school. But obviously, it's like, as you say, it also stands out.
Well, cheers, thanks for the answer.
Yeah. Did you have another question?
Yeah, just regards going down a rabbit hole in terms of the email. So that's the CD. In terms of like emailing from your perspective from the music industry, would it be like preferable a Google Drive link or attachment?
I love these questions. exactly the kind of
People
thing.
don't like attachments.
People don't like attachments.
No, because it just clogs you up. You get so many. Definitely a link.
I like
Would you agree?
I like a Dropbox link. A Dropbox link that maybe has like a PDF with the press release in it, so it's kind of easy to reference. Just to clarify as well, in case that this wasn't clear from what I said, I listen to everything I get sent.
Right.
You know, that's why I have a system. Obviously, I do get a lot of emails, but I think that's only fair to listen through to everything. And I think the people I work with are the same. So yeah. Any more super practical? I feel like I should write a manifesto.
Not just it's interesting too, because I know people who like radio DJs and stuff, and they tell you their stories.
Yeah.
And it's like, from my point of view, it's good to learn.
And it shouldn't feel so impenetrable, do you know what I mean? But I think the thing is, and like I've worked for commercial stations as well, but the BBC is kind of different because every single DJ is allowed to work in their own rogue way. So, you know, I feel like it's difficult for artists sometimes to figure out exactly the best way to sound things and to promote themselves. So
sorry, 6 music question. And also like the BBC, and I was wondering, what would you say the percentage was in terms of producers and DJs at Manchester or London?
Well, they had a mandate to move, because I was living in London doing bits and bobs for 6, and you know, I had to move to Manchester in order to do this show because they had a mandate to basically be less London centric. And I think it was something like, for 6, they needed like 60. Oh God, I can hear it too. Don't worry.
It's not just my
for 6, I think it was something like.
Is that the parade?
It's the second parade.
The second parade?
They're coming for us, Dave.
I thought it was the Orange Man.
Terrifying.
Sorry.
But yeah, I think it was like they had a mandate to move like 64% of their programming out of London.
Right,
You wouldn't necessarily know it, but I think they've done that now with Hugh based in Cardiff and various other people based.
They had to drag him kicking and screaming, like, but.
I like it now.
Not.
Yeah.
Cheers, thanks for the answer.
Yeah, sure.
Jay, you play CDs, don't you?
Me?
Yeah, do you?
I haven't played, but not particularly, no. I mean, I was certainly, when I was programming Night and Day, that was the main way that people sent them in, and that was my experience. I just used to kind of set aside some time and just go on a nice little journey. I really liked it. It was probably the best part of the job, getting sent music.
Yeah.
It was great, you know. It's probably the bit I missed the most.
I think if I've got a tip as a manager who receives a lot of stuff, having met you, I want to listen to it. But I would work out maybe the look and the branding and how it fits with the socials and all that kind of thing. Sometimes if you've not worked that bit out, it's better to just give quite a plain with details on it. And I'm not saying it looks bad. I just think that's something to think about if anyone's doing that. I'm thinking
aesthetic's important.
Yeah, I'm thinking back to the Oreos when they were the Oreos named after the biscuit, which they hate me saying now, but I don't manage them anymore, so I can say it all the time. It was quite nicely packaged in a little brown paper bag, so it was unusual the way they'd done it.
Yeah, they did. They were always really good at doing little personal details. I remember, I think it must have been a flexi disc that I ordered of theirs just after I'd seen them live, and I got a personal message with a heart that said we would like to sign to Heavenly on it, or something to that degree. Or it was certainly suggestive of that. Or we love Heavenly. That was it. We love Heavenly, and yeah, that certainly helped. Am I correct in saying that it's Holly McVie that you're supporting at the Bella Union as her label, which could be very suitable for your music.
Yeah.
I definitely have an email contact for them. I also currently have a young person that has been doing their apprenticeship scheme that has been working for them
Really
as well.
cool label as well.
But really cool label, and on listening to your music last year, possibly a suitable label, but if not, they would certainly be able to help with some advice, because not only are they a label, they are also a management company on one side as well. But if you can possibly, she may well want to speak to you and give you some advice. She strikes me as the type of artist that would be up for doing that. I don't know her personally, but yes, and certainly sort of, it's interesting that she is doing a day outside of a lot of the current sort of touring circuit. So asking where she found out about the venue and how she could then promote the venue to get more people to come and play as well.
I think it's finding like big places and how to actually reach out to Barrow. Like I think we said last year, like, if you're an artist from a place like here, you have to go somewhere else to be seen. And it's like people actually going to reach out to you. But I think a big part is like you've been saying, like how you put yourself across. Like I know like Damian kindly, like we've spoken like on Zoom since last year.
Yeah.
And he gave me tons of tips on how to organise my social media to give myself that profile. And now if you look through my social media compared to 3 years ago, I was just popping a poster out and just doing that thing, and then next day it's just a random photo of me. Like but since then it's more routine. Like you really see, if you look at my Instagram now, it is an artist.
It's more thought about what you're doing.
Yeah.
I thought you were going to say, God, everything I told you didn't work. Like that.
Do you know what though? I think there's some positives of being from somewhere like Barrow and not from Manchester, because it's saturated. It is so saturated. And so when you hear of an artist that's a quality artist from somewhere that is a bit different, it has a little bit of exotic around it, because we're so used to a million indie bands from Manchester. It's like, oh right, another Manchester band. And I think sometimes a really great artist, the way they're from Barrow, go, oh, there's an O factor rather than, oh no.
Yeah, I certainly think about places. I mean, we were in Wigan this week, and I was sort of saying to you how that was sort of the northern start of the Northern Soul. But whilst we were there, I was thinking, I wonder where the music venue is.
Yeah.
You know, I'm not, like I said, I'm not.
We saw Pop World. What are you talking about?
we did see Pop World. but yeah, I certainly look, and I follow the people that do the library tours, but because I normally want to go and visit the library as well as seeing the band. but there has been a lot less of that in recent years, just because the funding has been cut to those projects. But I think working out how to, you know, if you were to start getting some more radio play or doing something, I always think referring back to these things is important, because it is a unique thing and story.
I'm aware of the time. I'm going to start to wrap it up. I've got one last question for panellists then, and I'll start with Jay. I think a next step, kind of takeaway next step from this Barrow Music Week to focus on for Barrow, what would it be?
I think we've already said it. I think they should try and set up a music commission that has an ongoing relationship with the local council or the authority.
Excellent. Success. Thank you, Jay. That was very short and sweet.
That's a job for Lesley then.
Yeah.
Well, actually, I got a meeting with David Hoffman, who's doing the cultural thing for West Midlands, so hopefully we will get something.
Yeah. Sorry, Mr. Did you set up that messenger chat?
Yeah.
About, it's like something like that, but more physical,
Yeah,
isn't it?
when we were planning to have a meeting after this weekend, we always say we're going to do it, and everything else like really tired, and then it gets to September the next year. But we've said we're going to do it, so let's do it.
Yeah.
Well, maybe Lesley, you're the person to maybe have a day off work, have a day out.
Yeah. It's like, they're really good at thinking about.
Could the council give you funding for 1 day a week so that you can do that 1 day a week? Just concentrate on that.
The GM Music Commissions, everybody does it pro bono, nobody gets paid, we don't get a bus fare or anything, we do it because it's a good idea, but there's funding to do projects. So they ring-fence some funding. I think it might have come from UK SPF, I'm not sure, that says that there's funding, you know, for in Manchester. I'm not entirely sure where Steve Rotherham found money in Liverpool, but certainly there's money for projects in Manchester. And some of those projects don't actually have to cost anything either. They getting everybody together in the room, you probably can, as an ongoing thing, you can probably do that quite cheaply.
Yeah, a lot of it is about people like me or Dave or Katherine or Dem going, we'll give an hour a month of time to something.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, that's what I was
For
going to suggest in terms of your meeting was, you do get tired after a week-long event. I know we've had a few events this week and I'm feeling pretty tired. But perhaps you say, okay, we'll do this every 3 months and making it a staple thing and reaching out to some people that have been in this room that perhaps go home, something happens and they don't think about the fact that there's a record label here or the fact that they've got a gig coming up and they need someone to support them on that show. And just making it a regular thing. I mean, I've been to a couple of the music things in Manchester, and they do tend to always fall on weeks for me where perhaps I've got to be down in London to go to the office, or they've got to do that. But actually, I do go because I normally do take at least one thing away from it, even if it's just an idea that I've been mulling over and I just need to get it off my chest.
It might seem like there's just a few people here, it's very select, but every year we've gone away feeling inspired and motivated. So.
Yeah, well, I remember I came away last year and it's really made me think about things in a different way and places in a different way, as well as the people that it affects.
Yeah, definitely. It's all we spoke about on the train on the way back, wasn't
yeah.
it? Really? Deb. Hi. So a kind of, I don't know whether it's radio related or some other way related, but a takeaway, you think, as a next step for Barrow?
It's an interesting one because I feel like I guess I work in a more kind of remote way because I'm there sort of either. Obviously, I go to gigs and stuff, but mainly I receive music and I seek out music online. I mean, I'll certainly notice Barrow and Furnace like more on emails and stuff now. But I think, yeah, I mean, it's a tricky one to know how to facilitate better. Certainly, I'd like to participate in more things like this if it's useful. But I am pleased that there's a show on 6 where the entire production team is kind of dedicated to looking at representing places that aren't London or Manchester or these big cultural hubs. I mean, in terms of takeaways, this has been really enlightening for me. And I think it's particularly interesting what you mentioned about Barrow being this hub for experimental music. That's something that's really interesting to me because I feel like, I mean, it's kind of a pet favourite subject of mine anyway, but like, what is it about these places that make them so ripe for like experimental music? Like there's an artist called Warrington Runcorn who's put out an LP. It's like a concept album about it's about like the estate. It's about like the housing project in like Warrington Runcorn, and it made it to like number 11 in the actual pop charts. You know, he's got like this cult following. So I don't know. There's definitely a thread there that I'd like to look deeper into, and I feel like that's a kind of little testament to the fact that, like, you know, these green shoots can be found anywhere. It's probably not very useful. That's more what I'm taking away.
What I'm getting from that is sort of celebrate the weird stuff. Because that's what makes places unique.
That's going to be on my gravestone.
Yeah. Celebrate the weirdness.
Yeah.
Katherine, you kind of answered already, but.
Yeah, I mean, I do think there's definitely more work that labels can do for seeking out bands outside of the bigger cities. I obviously think English Teacher winning the Mercury Prize this year and being outside of London was a massive win for the North. I mean, I did instantly think, I remember all the criticism last year about Ezra Collective was that they were another London band winning it. So I was slightly sceptical as to if the decision had already been made at that point. Right, next year, oh my God, we've got to get a band that are not from London because we're being criticised here. And that is my scepticism, and that's my scepticism again coming from a label that is based in London, where, let's face it, most record labels are still based in London. There's even few record labels in Manchester, so it is difficult to, when those things happen, to not feel negative about it. But the positive in it is that those artists, whether it's Ezra Collective or it's English Teacher, they are talking about things that are really interesting. They're talking about the youth centres. They're talking about the, Lily Fontaine, sorry, she's going into the Music Venue Trust, and she's been in government talking about these things. So again, they are, as artists, actively inspiring young people to not necessarily always stay where you are, but certainly look at your wider community more closely rather than the bigger cities. But that wider community doesn't need to be just the small town. It can be the sort of 3 or 4 smaller towns that surround it. And yeah, I think as a label we are. We cover the minority languages pretty well. Cornish, Welsh, and at the moment one of our biggest artists is a Gaelic hip hop rap band, Kneecap. But we do go and see those bands play in their towns, and it never ceases to amaze me that some this excludes managers, by the way. Managers are excellent at it, but some labels don't go and see their artists play in Dublin or in Belfast or wherever they are, and I'm thinking, but you're missing a trick, because if you don't put on shows with those artists doing big hometown gigs and having local support, then you're not giving back to your community. Arctic Monkeys have been terrible at it, which I think is so disappointing. The Lead Mill is in a state of, is it going to still be a venue? And not one member of that band has said anything about it, and it disgusts me sort of every time. But then on the flip side of that, you've got your yard acts, you've got your English teachers, you've got your Blossoms are absolutely excellent at doing it, and they keep returning to their roots and promoting those things. And I think the more that people do that, the more people sit up and take notice. And I think having moved from London to Manchester, seeing places like the Trades Club in Hebden Bridge, where X amount of bands have played, realising how many bands have formed from those shows, I think...
and you think about Hebden, it's a similar place to this.
Really similar.
It's not like a major city. It's like, why Hebden? But they've made something happen there, haven't they?
Yeah, I think people need to move... It's funny, we've had the Trades Club approach us again and sort of say, well, when are you going to do a Heavenly Weekender again? And I'm already thinking, I'm not sure it's fair if we do another one in Hebden. We should be looking to do one somewhere else. With more of our sort of more current roster being from other places. We should be looking at Belfast next and what we could be doing there, not returning to the same things. I think Steve Lamacroy's had quite a similar habit of returning to the same places. We get in our comfort zones, we get in our bubbles, we surround ourselves by the same people and the same things. But
it's challenging,
and it's hard work to break out of those. But things like this do remind me to.
Yeah, but especially if you're like a label, or we have a again with our show, we have this we believe in this kind of obligation that we have to go to smaller places, but you still have to go to a city that's going to give you enough content, enough people through the door, you mentioned
response to the idea.
Yeah, exactly. You mentioned that gig where you were supporting what is his name? Beautiful South. Oh yeah. And there was only 15 people turning out. So I think that's kind of risky, isn't it? If you're an organisation and you want to go somewhere to put on an event, it's the more you choose to kind of represent something smaller, the more
even was somewhat of an issue for everyone involved. But actually now the knock-on effect of that with all of those bands that formed, and then we did one at the Breedonell in Leeds, and I heard on the radio that's where Yard Act first saw Katie play. Now Katie's singing on one of her songs, and it's I think Yeah, just like you were saying earlier, the responsibility isn't just with the government. The responsibility is that we're looking after each other as much as possible as well. Whether that's the weird electro or the indie rock.
I wonder whether maybe we should have a conversation with the likes of Hector. Just say what is it that you did?
Yeah, absolutely.
Well,
Future Yard and Birkenhead as well. Yeah, because they've absolutely smashed it out.
And it's made Hebden a bit trendy as well.
It has.
It's very trendy.
Yeah.
I often wonder what came first.
Yeah.
You know, the music venues and the music culture, and the trendy people, or was it the other way around?
Well, Hebden was. So one of the things about the Trains is a cooperative venue, so it's owned by the community. So that was important. It's always had an alternative
culture.
It was known for being the hotspot for lesbians.
Yeah.
Actually, was the big thing.
Right.
But it's got the real pale, the kind of trendy bars and all that sort of thing. But yeah, it's a great example.
But I mean,
and also Todmorden, because Dublin and Todmorden
It's just down the road.
in a way a sort of better example.
Yeah.
Because it is more remote.
Yeah.
Let's just, because we've all got to get home at some point. But Dave, the last thing, I'm going to bring Jay in or something.
Okay. I think twofold for me. So I was just thinking, what can we do? It's just all right coming here and talking, and then we go back to our metropolis and go back on with our normal lives. And I thought, no, what really can we do? And what got me really thinking was what Jay was saying earlier about lobbying, because I do with Live Nation, Damian does it, Metropolis, SJM, weekly, all the massive promoters that are doing the massive shows and taking loads of money, okay? And I thought, okay, well, what I'm going to start doing for me is when I speak to our agent, I'm going to go, Charlie, I want you to speak to them and push the angle that there's a levy on the tickets, okay, that goes to grassroots. Because why not? Because it's very like football, isn't it? All the money's in the Premiership. You see, 80, 90 billion transfer fees, and it flops, and it's just money wasted. And you think, and then you go down the leagues, and they're struggling. They really are struggling, because it's the same thing. The money's all in the hands of a few people. And it's never going to change unless people like us open our gobs and go and support people like what Jay's doing and say, you can afford it. You can afford 50 pence off a ticket. You can afford it. So we're doing a thing with Bolton Wanderers Football Club, okay, where we're looking at trying to put on what's called the Wanderers Weekender, okay, where we put 3 days of music on at the stadium. And it's quite big artists we're looking at. We're looking at from, Sam Fender headlining, Biffy Clyro doing another night. And we already decided that 2 things we want to try and do is open each day with a local artist, because they would never get a gig at a stadium, ever. So, and not Manchester, Bolton, Bury, Blackburn, those artists, like the surrounding areas, give them a shot. And the second thing we're going to do is we're going to put a levy on the tickets of 50 pence a ticket that goes towards Bolton Lads and Girls Club. So something goes back in the community. If we can do it as a new start, why can't they do it? Why can't the Corp Arena do it? Why can't the AO? Do you know what I mean? Why can't it's nothing to 50 pence is nothing to them a ticket.
That's another hour of Corp Arena. That's not even near that. Jay, don't start talking.
Yeah, so there's that bit from us. That's what I was thinking. I want to start having those conversations, because it's different when we think of Barrow from Manchester. We've never met any of you people, not looked into your eyes. But when we sit here and see real human beings, then you go on and think, no, we could actually start and do stuff and help. The other thing from your perspective is, I think everything's about youth. I really do. I think politics, I think music is engaging youth. And I'll be honest, we probably have 2, what I would call youth in the room. Okay, thank you for coming. Because really, if you think about today, what you've got here is 2 managers, BBC Radio and a record company. Why aren't there a load of people in this room? So it's trying to reach out to youth, okay, and getting them engaged. And a lot of the time, it's like Damian said earlier, you'll have kids into drum and bass. It's not just about guitar music and people singing songs. It's drum and bass, it's electronic music. It's people who are sitting in the bedrooms doing dance music, hip-hop, getting those kids into the room and understanding the industry and what they need to do as well. How do you reach out to them people? Because that's my
Before Jay reminded me of something, so I'm just going to, back on the commission idea, just to kind of get some ideas going. We've got subgroups on the commission, We've got a Spaces and Places, which is about, obviously, venues. Is, you know, fairly obvious, but protecting venues, what happens to venues, what happens outside venues, getting to venues, etc. Routes to market, so from education through to industry, connections, mentoring, etc. We've got diversity, inclusivity, subgroup. Health and well-being, so mental health, writing lyrics for just writing lyrics for the sake of writing lyrics, poetry, rap, whatever it is. And education, skills and development, which is kind of linked to the routes to market, but obviously there are routes to market for kids who don't go to FE and HE, and there's routes to market. How do you get those kids who are dropping through the hole, you know, or are in the bedroom making music and don't know who to speak to? And I know you and I had similar, you know, I had upbringing, I didn't know anyone in music. I worked in athletics, and that's how I met people who worked in music by accident. Otherwise, I wouldn't have met anyone. I wouldn't be here talking. I'm fortunate for you. Anyway, but I'd like to thank the panel, Deb, Katherine, DCP and Jay. Thank you very much for speaking today. Big round of applause. Thank you.
And yeah, thank you all for you.
Thanks for coming.
Coming along
Your
and
opinions,
for hosting
yeah.
once again.
Fantastic.
And yeah, one thing I would love to mention, and it's probably something my own fault for not looking in advance, but I'd love to know, like instead of just coming for say the 4 hours, you know, I'd love to know what else a bit sooner to an event like this as to what is actually going on, what's going to be around, and have the opportunity
you have to come and
stick
stay
around.
over the night before
Yeah,
and go to some of the
really
things.
have
Yeah.
some really have some bullet points about the best places to go and the best places to see, so that it doesn't feel quite as not even that. Just it doesn't feel so intimidating. Because believe it or not, I get intimidated going to new places too.
Just one interesting fact, did you know Brian from Fontaine?
I did do my research on that one. I'm in no way a Fontaine's fan.
He was born in Barrow.
He was.
Really?
Yeah, his mum's from Barrow.
From Dublin though.
Yeah,
he moved, but he was born in Barrow.
His family moved to Dublin.
So he has been here since. That's good to
He
know.
comes back and visits because he's still got grandparents here, so he comes back and if you watch the recent video for Favourite,
It is in there,
there's clips of him, because in that video we've got clips of when we were children.
they're all,
and there's little clips of him on the beach.
I did notice.
So it's still got association with the town.
Yeah.
Thanks again.
Thank you.
Thank you.